Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I hope we're having fun tonight. This is Dan Winter, as you know, fractalfield.com, and I'm so excited with us, Sam Osmanagich from the Bosnian pyramids, the man himself.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for coming, Sam. It's all good, all good. And you know, Sam has been helping people for years and years having a rejuvenation effect at the pyramid, and we have been gossiping about, well, what's the real physics of these things for many years, haven't we, Sam?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And Sam's been trying to drag me over there to make some measurements, but Patrick, who's already also here with us, wave hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Patrick was brave enough to actually wander over there twice and make the measurements we're about to discuss, that critical 53 hertz, for example, and talk about why that is proof of what the pyramids are doing electrically. And by the way, Valerie was along, she was there and she's here smiling, but she's shy, so it's okay. and everybody, Roger's here, so it's a veritable party. And anywho, so what we agreed on is I'm going to do a 5-minute warm-up intro, and then Sam is going to present his slides on measurements they've made and more. And then I'm going to, kind of go into the science in some depth. So the intro slide here, now here's the intro slide, hit screen share. Intro slide right here, longitudinal. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm slow, guys. Here we go. Okay. So the title of our talk today is The Electrical Function of Pyramids. For too long, people have been discussing, pyramids have all these amazing effects, but have electrical engineers ever explained in a way that you could teach at a university what the electrical function of pyramids are? That's why we're here tonight specifically. And myself and Sam, Sam's going to give you his website, etc. And mine, fractalfield.com. So why was the pyramid called the Hummer in the ancient literature? Actually, the hum is the phase conjugate pump wave, the infrasound of the low frequency harmonics of the Schumann Earth harmonics, which is in fact a phase conjugate harmonic series shaped like a caduceus by the guy Hermes, who many people think designed the Great Pyramid. And so that called caduceus in their literature and phase conjugation in my literature. So that kind of a pump wave drives the charge down to implosive center and spits out what's called a longitudinal EMF wave. And that longitudinal wave we're going to present is the physics of what a gravity wave is gravitobiology, why it's bioactive, and is the physics of what made it a global wireless power distribution. So we're going to explain why that explains why it has been called in the ancient literature what was called a gravity diode, a one-way wave. What would a gravity diode be if you were in electrical engineering class? Well, after you know why an object falls to the ground, I guess that leaves out the scientists of planet Earth, then you know that when a phase conjugate pump wave pushes the charge through the Planck threshold, spitting out coherent longitudinal EMF, and Bearden's equations proving that's what a gravity wave is, then you know how a gravity diode works, a one-way gate for charging the longitudinal array, which is how gravitational waves propagate. And that's what's behind where all the ancients talked about gravity and atmosphere stabilization because of the array of the pyramids. Also, we're going to talk about what makes it then an implosive seed and plant trigger, and what makes it create the rejuvenation age reverse effect. I will raise a Shem unto the Lord is the ancient Sumerian language for, it's not, it doesn't, mistranslation, I will build an altar in my church. No. A Shem unto the Lord is a charge structure that produces age reversal and rejuvenation is. That's what a Shem unto the Lord is. And Sitchin got it almost right when he said it's a high-word firestone. What he meant, implosive capacitance. And Sam is going to talk about people coming from all over the world to Bosnia to have this rejuvenation effect. And finally, we know why, because when that charge implodes through center, that centripetal force has a sorting effect on the aura. And that sorting is called the origin of biologic negentropy. Oh, what a coincidence. That's the title of my book. So that negentropy results from the implosion of charge induced by this phase conjugate pump wave. We're going to talk about why the pyramids were used to charge seeds and rejuvenate people. And then we're going to talk about, as the Pleiadians and the Andromedans both taught in detail, the pyramid array was designed by the pre-Federation specifically to be a successful longitudinal array pump wave for global wireless power. We're going to talk about exactly how Tesla's dream went awry because he didn't know the geometry and he didn't know the frequencies. And then we're going to talk about plasma projection, how that same ability to project charge out to the longitudinal node is exactly what needs to happen to the aura for a lucid dream to turn into a stargate, literally. And we're talking electrical engineering, designing the field to trigger lucid dreaming, and why, when a lucid dreaming is plasma dense enough, it is a stargate. And it can serve as a plug for access to longitudinal charge or propulsion craft. So we're going to try to really talk seriously about what pyramids were built for. And we're going to talk about this famous book called Two-Thirds, David Myers and David Percy, that originally talked about this gravitational pump wave by the alignment of the pyramid at the tetrahedral nodes and what that meant. And we're going to talk about that story. But before we do now, I just wanted to kind of whet your appetite, set the stage, have a little fun. We're going to analyze the frequencies that Sam is about to talk about. But next, we're going to do Sam's slideshow, in which he's going to show us the background. The things that are very relevant in Sam's presentation are where he shows the precise alignment, which is how you get the phase conjugate pump wave, the north-south, and where he measures the infrasound frequencies, and Patrick measured 53 hertz, and Sam measured that at 28 kilohertz at the top. We're going to explain exactly why, and Sam is going to talk about how it rejuvenates people, et cetera, et cetera. So Sam's story is a perfect background now to help us understand the physics of why pyramids work. Okay, so I'm going to stop my screen share. And Sam, please, your slideshow. Sam presented this slideshow as part of a recent work with Crystal of Fezzik, and it was a fabulous presentation, and I don't think it reached enough people. And so some of those slides I think are very relevant here, and I think we'll get a tremendous audience. People are hungry to understand why pyramids work. Please, Sam.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Dan. After 4 decades of the pyramid research around the world, I've concluded that almost everything they teach us about the ancient history is wrong. The origin of man, civilizations, and pyramids. They've been programming us to think about the pyramids as tombs for the pharaohs in Egypt. And secondly, they're telling us pyramids are built in Egypt and Mexico. Wrong, wrong. In Egypt, 155 pyramids, 28 of them huge, superior, and the oldest. Not only 3 Giza pyramids, but not a single scientific argument who, when, how, and why. And that's why then we need to develop a pyramid science.
Exactly.
Pyramids.
The physics.
Yes, yes. Pyramids, we have them in Tenerife, 104 of them. Spanish scientific community called them pile of rocks. 7 of them on the island of Mauritius in the middle of the Indian Ocean. When I suggested Mauritius government to research them, they told me these are not pyramids. Beautiful 4-sided pyramids. Gunung Padang, in the middle of the jungle, Western Java, 28,500 years old pyramid, discovered by our friend, Dr. Danny Hillman. The Mayan civilization built 100,000 pyramids. Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Belize. 97% of them still covered by soil and vegetation. Peru, more than 300 pyramids. This is the largest one, the Pyramid of the Sun, Huaca del Sol. On the other side, Huaca de la Luna, the Moon Pyramid. Who built those giants? Look at the size of this pyramid. This is just 1/3 of its original size. And today, the surface is more than 6 surfaces of the football fields. Koh Ker Pyramid in northern Cambodia, 4-sided, 7-tier, number 7, very important number. element of sacred geometry. Perfect orientation to the cardinal points, east, west, north, south. We have resonance channel or passageways going at 9 degrees from the top. We have resonance chambers inside this pyramid. We have artificial lakes with the channels, running water, kinetic energy. So we have elements of the pyramids that we can meet all around the planet.
We're going to talk about the fact that the liquid in the
Yes.
pyramid actually can be used to concentrate the phase conjugate pump wave as it emerges as a longitudinal wave. So the water can serve that function, and in some cases, even more dense mercury, actually. So the fact that this concentration used the liquid to concentrate that wave.
It's funny you mentioned mercury. When I was in China talking to their archaeologists, out of 250 pyramids, 20 of them were built over 12,000 years back. They are not open for public. And Chinese archaeologists told me that there was a mercury under the pyramid.
Yeah, and the Pleiadians have taught us that mercury was used to concentrate that longitudinal wave, not unlike how it was used in the Nazi bell and the Vimana.
Well, we consider mercury poison, but in small quantities, it can be very beneficial, even for our health. Teotihuacan in Mexico, 3 major pyramids, Sun, Moon, Quetzalcoatl, the same layout like Egyptian pyramids, or Palencia pyramids in Spain. 120 Cahokia pyramids, which are called Cahokia mounds, but you see, bottom right, perfect pyramidal shape.
Gorgeous.
Archaeologists are telling us they cannot get permissions to uncover them, and archaeology is very expensive. Well, this pyramid, which is shown on the picture, is called Monk's Mound, has a surface 12% larger than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Instead of having a huge commercial touristic site, they are not allowed to uncover them. Why? They were not built by the white Europeans. They are not built by American Indians because they never built such structures. But by who? We changed the American history. We changed the Mexican and Peruvian and Egyptian once we find the true original builders. So we tried to find the explanation. What are the criteria that has to be fulfilled to call something a pyramid? The first one is geometry. This is the aerial photo of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun in central Bosnia, which I discovered back in 2005. Here we can clearly see 2 triangular faces. There are 4 of them. We can see the 3 corners. We can see there are 4 of them. We can see the same slope from the bottom to the top. It's a perfect geometrical shape of the 4-sided pyramid. Once we started digging, this is the corner between the north and east. We are discovering the structure. The matter of fact is that would be our second criteria, artificial construction material. In Guatemala, they used volcanic rock. In Peru, they used adobe bricks. In Mexico, sandstone and granite. In Egypt, limestone and granite. In China, sandstone and granite. Material, very important.
And
in both
by the
cases,
way, not to interrupt, but by the way, Sam, that the theory would suggest that higher dielectric constant results in more charge implosion. For example, limestone would be a much higher dielectric than sandstone and would actually create more implosion. So we could even measure that.
And then limestone and then granite, 4 to 14% of the quartz crystal.
Yeah.
Volcanic stone, iron, energy potent material.
Yeah.
In Bosnia, what we have on these photos, once we start uncovering the pyramid, just 3-4 feet below the ground, we are discovering blocks. We've analyzed them, artificially made concrete blocks. Even the geometry, you see the rectangular perfect geometry. This block that we can see on the picture, just 3.5 feet below the soil, perfect rectangular shape, 7 tons in mass. So what we have bottom left, the pyramid as it looks today, on the big picture, we only change the color. Instead of green, We gave it the color of the concrete, the brownish gray color. So most probably this was the original shape of the pyramid when it was built. The third very important element, we are finding it in the case of Chinese pyramids, Egyptian, Peruvian, American, Cambodian, and so on. It's perfect orientation to the cardinal points, to the cosmic north. The Great Pyramid of Egypt has an error from the perfect north, 0 degrees and 3 minutes. Kefren or Kafred, the second largest, 0 degrees 3 minutes. Mycerian or Mycerinus, 0 degrees 18 minutes. Red Pyramid, 0 degrees 5 minutes. Bent Pyramid, 0 degrees 12 minutes. And the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, 0 degrees, 0 minutes and 12 seconds, the most precise orientation. Now, this pyramid is over 220 meters in height, and the length at the side, 660 meters. Imagine the trouble they needed to go through to have this 660 meters, 2,000 feet, perfectly oriented with to the north with the error of 0 degrees, 0 minutes, and 12 seconds. It's a genius. It has to be a big reason why. The way we see our planet, of course, everything is energy. Our planet is a huge energy ball, and two major energy flows are north-south, east-west. We built four-sided pyramid, perfectly oriented. It initiates the movement of the energy inside the pyramid.
Well, yes, and Sam, we could talk about the fact that when you're lining lasers to phase conjugate with the right angles required have to be angstrom level accuracy. And in this case, the alignment is with the longitudinal wave of the sun. And that alignment has to be precisely north-south. And just the other thing you mentioned is that quartz, the content of that structure, making it highly piezo, contributes powerfully to the implosive capacitance, which is actually related to the measurements we're going to talk about later. So all these things fit with the physics. Go ahead, Sam, please.
Talking about the piezoelectrical effect, we notice that we measure 28 kilohertz electromagnetism, but then, thanks to the quartz crystal, it transforms this electromagnetic field to the ultrasound, the same frequency, 28.
Perfect. It's gorgeous. That's what the piezo is. It's the coupling between the piezoelectric and the phonon. And we're going to explain exactly why it's 28 kilohertz in a few minutes.
The next elements, of course, most of the pyramids, they do have inner passageways, chambers, and so on. In our case, geophysical measurements show the presence of 7 levels, 7 depths of the tunnels, and they are basically laid out like a spiral. The next one, geothermal analysis, showing us that the pyramids, and we have actually 6 so far, that they lose the energy, they lose the warmth much quicker than the natural hills. Why? Because the natural hills are result of the sedimentation, which lasted millions of years. They are very compact. They get warm very, very slowly. They lose the energy and warmth very slowly. But in the case of pyramids, due to the existence of chambers and passageways, they lose energy much quicker. The next element, underground tunnels. 40 years ago, Egyptologists were saying they don't have tunnels under the Egyptian pyramids, and now they admit they have tunnels under every major Egyptian pyramid. The same thing goes for the Mayan pyramids, Palenque and other places, Teotihuacan pyramids, they discovered tunnels on the sun, moon, Quetzalcoatl, and the Chinese pyramids. But on the Bosnian pyramids, we have the most extensive underground tunnel network, and so far we've discovered 6 entrances total, and entrances to 2 different levels, 476 meters above the sea level and 471. The next element, water. You mentioned the water, extremely important elements. We have 2 major rivers in the central Bosnian Pyramid Valley, and a lot of underground water flows. Water moves, releases the negative ions, one of the major elements for the benefits of human health.
And conducts the longitudinal array. And just not to back up, but when Sam mentioned that it's losing heat faster, we're going to talk about when phase conjugate negentropy is working, the definition of success is spontaneous cooling, as in Schauberger. So we're going to talk about that parallel. Go ahead, Jim.
We are finding a lot of elements of sacred geometry on many megalithic and pyramid sites around the world. For example, equilateral triangle is one of them. In our cases, when we connect the tops of the Sun, Moon, and Dragon pyramid in Bosnia, the distances between the tops, 2,180 meters, Sun to the Moon, Moon to the Dragon, 2,180, Dragon back to the Sun, 2,180. The next one, the green line shows Sun, Moon, and Dragon. The red line shows the top of the Love Pyramid, top of the Temple of Mother Earth, entrance to the tunnels, and the river Fonica. Again, equilateral triangle. Within equilateral triangle, elements of sacred geometry. We have also two golden section spirals, top of the Sun Pyramid, top of the Love Pyramid, two more pyramid hills, and so on. So they are playing with those elements of sacred geometry. Number pi, 3.14, for example, the Giza pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Egypt, 231 meters, the length of the side, two lengths, 462, divided by height, 146.6, result 3.14. So really it is, in front of our faces, all these elements. Why would they do that if they were just tombs for one dead body? Of course they were not tombs. They were built as the energy amplifiers.
Yes, and when we can exactly explain why those ratios produce a frequency signature and why that resulting frequency signature causes perfected implosion, that's when before people say, well, that's just numerology, but now we're going to see that it's actually electrical physics. That's the point.
It's much more than that, you're right. And the pyramid builders, when they were building those pyramid complexes, they would work on so many different levels, not just one. For example, astronomical features, the way they would lay out those pyramids, of course, elements of sacred geometry, but look at this play of the light and the shadow. The photo to the left shows the shadow of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun in the middle of August when it is the hottest time. And further away, we can see the western slope of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon covered by soil, vegetation, and the forest. These are the afternoon hours. To the right, we can see the evening hours, the sunset. Just before the sunset, the shadow of the Sun Pyramid completely covers the Moon Pyramid, top of the shadow touching the top of the Moon Pyramid.
It's exquisite, exquisite.
Obviously, and we are looking at from the top of the Sun Pyramid. Obviously, it was astronomical observatory. And then, of course, other dates, we don't have a time right now, but June 21st, the shadow of the Sun Pyramid forms another pyramid to the right from the southern side of the Moon Pyramid, telling us the summertime, the hot days are coming during the September 23rd, fall equinox. We can see this shadow from the left of the northern side of the Moon Pyramid. They were playing with those shadows. They were playing with the heights of the pyramids, and they simply had to be those dimensions.
And remember, the optical shadow would be an indicator of the shadow of the longitudinal wave, which is the primary energy of the sun, how the sun grows plants in a dark basement. So the shadow of that longitudinal wave is actually how they're playing with the gravity wave. So it all fits together.
Wow. We also realized that the pyramids were always built above energy potent places. It can be underground water flow. It can be, for example, iron plate. Iron is very important because it generates electromagnetic field, and it seems that the pyramid amplifies this energy. And then another element which has not been mentioned in science at all. Our friend from Finland, he analyzed volcanic lines. When you connect two volcanoes, you are getting volcanic line. Now, it can be unlimited number of volcanic lines. However, megalithic and pyramid sites were built on the top of several intersections of volcanic lines. For example, the pyramid temples in Angkor Wat, Cambodia, 15 volcanic lines are below this pyramid. Cholula, the largest pyramid in Mexico, in the state of Puebla, is built above 18 volcanic lines. Gunung Padang, Indonesia, 17, and so on. The Bosnian pyramids, above 26 volcanic lines, and 15 of them has 3 or more volcanoes on the line. Why is that? Well, volcanoes has something to do with the energy. Iron, energy potent stuff, minerals, lava, and so on. Now, ley lines have been mentioned a lot, especially in southern England, with the claim that the majority of the churches, cathedrals were built on the top of the ley lines. Ley lines being underground energy lines, probably of the cosmic origin. Well, this is one of the maps with the ley lines in Bosnia. This country in the middle to the left is Bosnia. And we can see that at one particular place, there are the greatest number of ley lines going north, south, east, west, and also diagonal. To the right, we can see that the central place is not the capital city of Sarajevo, which is a little bit to the right, but the town of Visoko, where the Bosnian pyramids have been built.
That's called embedding. That's actually how you embed a longitudinal array and get leverage on the grid. It's perfect.
Our friend, unfortunately late, Dr. Harry Oldfield, he developed a camera which he named PIP camera. With this camera, he was able to film, he called them bioenergy fields, which are not visible to the naked human eye. This is the photo of just the regular pointy natural hill in Bosnia. Those bioenergy fields above, the green and the blue and the red, they are all horizontal. This is a village in Western Serbia. Above the buildings, we can see green and the blue and the red and the green and the blue, again, horizontal. This is the red rocks in Sedona, Arizona. The most famous is the Bell Rock. You can see behind those lines. Now it's improved, updated camera. It's called the NEV, New Energy Vision Camera, which I have. And it shows, again, brown, green, blue, red, always horizontal. This is the road from Aswan to Abu Simbel in Egypt, southern Egypt. To the right, we can see some pyramid hills, not artificial structures. Again, we can see horizontal fields. And in the back, this is one of the pyramid mountains in Germany. They call it the pyramid, however, horizontal. And this is the case of Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. We can see the vertical bioenergy lines. Now, this is 2015. Dr. Harry Oldfield came himself back in 2007, and this is the photo that he made. And again, you can see a vertical line. What's happening? It seems that this red color inside the pyramid indicates that the energy is getting accumulated and then going through the top of the pyramid, making those lines vertical. This is nice panoramic photo of the town of Visoko back in 2015 and 16. Above 215, you see to the right is the town. There are some structures, there are some buildings, horizontal. But the moment you come closer to the pyramid, we can see the vertical lines. And then the photo from 2016 is showing the same thing. So now we knew that something is happening energetically when it comes to the pyramids.
And when we talk about the change between a transverse interferometry, a transverse electromagnetics, the conventional electromagnetic communication, versus the longitudinal plasma projection, that change is literally a right angle, that translation of vorticity. And so that the right angle of plasma projection, literally upward and outward out of the grid, is a profound indicator, in fact, why the ancients were called the El as in Elohim. So it is literally a right angle of translation of vorticity that changes from conventional transverse to the longitudinal wave, sometimes called scalar, which is the physics of the gravity wave, which is going to fit what follows this conversation.
Wow, wonderful. Now, I apply this camera to the second largest pyramid in Egypt, the Khafre or Khafren pyramid, and you see the same effect. We can see vertical bioenergy lines. Top right, those two things, these are two clouds, but whenever you have a blue sky, clean sky, no clouds, those lines perfectly vertical. For me, it was a sign that those pyramids, the Bosnian pyramids, Egyptian pyramids, are still energetically active, whatever it means. So obviously, we need a new science and we need new definition of the pyramids.
Exactly.
Pyramid are energy amplifiers. Pyramids are shortly the energy machines. A few years back, it was a lot of talk about the LiDAR technology applied in the Mayan world in northern Guatemala. They discovered 42,000 new structures in the jungles. We applied this technology 6 years before the Japanese in Guatemala. And look what it shows. To the right, we can see clearly the triangular face of the northern slope of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. But once we remove the forests and buildings, thanks to the LiDAR technology, we can see that the pyramid is going all the way to the bottom of the valley. We can see clearly the eastern slope, again, bottom of the valley. So this size is about, it gives us about 360 meters as a pyramid height. So it's amazing. It's, of course, by far the largest pyramid on the planet. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, 190 meters, the central photo covered by soil, forest, and so on. Wherever we are digging, we are finding paved terraces, we are finding blocks. These are all sandstone plates, sandstone blocks in the combination with the clay. Here we are at the top of the Moon Pyramid. So we remove the soil, we cut the hole to see how the structure looks like. We can see the first terrace, the second, the third, and let's go in this hole. And here we can see, the first row of blocks, and then about 5 centimeters of clay, the second row of blocks, again, clay, probably as the binding material, and then the third row of blocks. So we have a huge pyramidal structure.
And we could talk about those layers and the difference of dielectric between them as exactly how you increase the charge in the layered role of a capacitor. So the difference in the dielectric of those two materials will indicate the power of that to compress charge.
Wonderful. Here we are close to the base of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon. We removed the soil, and now here we can see, again, sandstone plates. The one at the base, they are larger. In the middle, they are mid-size and the small. Large, mid-size, small, all the way to the top. And when we see the layers, it seems that the Fibonacci formula can be applied here.
And we know the Fibonacci cascade leads to golden ratio, which is phase conjugation perfected.
Yes. Age. The pyramids are covered by soil. Bosnian Institute for Agropedology analyzed the soil, concluding the age is between 12 and 15,000 years, meaning the structures are much older. And then our archaeological team, they discovered fossilized leaves below the first layer of concrete. Here they are. We've run radiocarbon dating, and on the bottom of the report, we can see the age of 29,200 years, plus minus 400 years before present. So we go back for 30,000 years, and this is what really causes the controversies among the scientific community. But we are simply doing the science, because when you talk to them about the age, they will tell you, well, at that time there was nothing, just the primitive caveman. Well, on the bottom of the Pacific floor, monuments, they've been there much longer than the end of the last ice age. They are 80 meters below the surface of the Pacific. At one time, they were on the surface. When? During the last ice age. But when ice melted, Pacific rose for about 80 meters. Or Göbekli Tepe, officially 11,600. However, those megalithic circles, they did 4 radiocarbon dating. It shows 10,000 BC or 12,000 before present. That's radiocarbon. In order to get calibrated date, you're adding about 14 to 15%. It is 13,600. And that's a big no for the, cultural establishment, for historians, for archaeologists. They don't want to see anything in what they call Paleolithic times. But the proofs are in front of our eyes. And imagine not one megalithic circle in Göbekli Tepe, not three, as many as Dr. Klaus Schmidt, late Klaus Schmidt, uncovered them, not six, as Turkish government did, more than 100. This is what he told me 8 years back. And you know what they teach us? They teach us only when the agricultural civilizations came, they had enough funds to build the big stuff. Well, after 25 years of research in Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey, they have not found not a single residential dwelling. You should have hundreds of thousands of people living there to support such a huge projects, but no houses.
Yeah, that's what they said in the dolmen in New England too. They said they researched it. They never used them to live in them. They in fact used them to charge their seeds, to rejuvenate their people, to plasma project and lucid dreaming. There was a very specific physics function, and you did not live in the sacred space.
There you go, exactly. Now, we are coming to the question of purpose of pyramids. Of course, you mentioned some of them. When it comes to the energy, we have had teams with physicists, electrical engineers, sound engineers, telecommunication engineers. Among them, this is the Croatian team. They are bringing their instruments. Once you bring the instrument and you measure, if you can measure, then you can scientifically prove that. So they brought their instruments. We can see Gauss meters. We can see, some other instruments like oscilloscopes, spectrometers, and they measure on top of the Bosnian pyramid of the sun, coming with the results that they have this frequency of 28 kilohertz energy beam on the very top of the sun pyramid, but also later on the top of the moon pyramid, on the top of the Vratnica tumulus. Tumulus in archaeology is, of course, artificially made conical hill.
And
another team,
you got 28 kilohertz on the top of all of them?
Yes.
Aha, so that's the moment at which I got excited and called up and Sam and said we had to make this recording, because I'm going to explain how we calculated why that 28 kilohertz is there. That's very cool. Go ahead.
Yes. Team from Serbia brought their scientific instruments. Here's the list of them, and they got the same frequency, and they independently confirm the 28 kilohertz frequency. We had team from Finland, from Italy, from Germany. They all got the same results. So when in science, you have teams from different countries, they come at different times, they bring their own equipment, they all got the same result. It is called an international scientific verification of the phenomenon. Which phenomenon? This energy beam going through the top of the Bosnian pyramid of the sun with a 13 feet or about 4 meters radius, which then expands to 20 meters or about 70 feet, coming back to 4.5 and so on. So we measured natural hills. There is nothing like that in the vicinity of the Bosnian pyramids. That was another reason for us to conclude that we have artificially made pyramid. A couple of years back, we had a total moon eclipse, July 27, 2018, and we wanted to see if different layouts of the closest cosmic bodies and most important bodies like Sun, Moon, Mars, and so on, had any effect on the strength of this signal. And we measured before the eclipse, and then we measured during the eclipse. At that time, the eclipse was like 9:15 p.m. until 10:40 p.m. Our conclusion was that electrical field was twice as strong during the moon's eclipse.
Yeah,
What?
the theory here, Sam, would be, first of all, the 28 kilohertz is what's enabling for the implosion to spit out that longitudinal array, which is that beam you're seeing. And the theory would be that the moon's metallic dielectric would inhibit. So if the moon is literally getting out of the way of the solar longitudinal, then it should increase. So that would be the interesting question here. For example, the presence of the moon has a dramatic effect on seed germination, and the moon's dielectric is opposite to conjugate. So when the moon is actually in front of the sun, the plants are not growing. But if the moon is on the other side of the sun, then the plants grow better because they're getting more longitudinal from the sun. So we should be able to predict which way that goes. Anyway.
Oh, that's amazing. You see, we did experiment with the seeds of beans.
Yes.
And with the control group, you know, the bags with the seeds we put at home, and then we put one in the tunnels and one on the top of the sun pyramid. So those two bags, they are exposed to the pyramid energy. 14 days later, after the incubation period, we wanted to see the germination rate. In the case of the control group, it was 60%. So not every seed would start growing. Yeah. And we know that when you buy the seeds of vegetables or fruits or flowers, not every seed will start growing. But in the case of the seeds from the tunnels and the top of the sun pyramid, it was 100%.
That's the point. And that's why Bearden calls it gravitobiology, the physics of the longitudinal wave. It's basically the seed has to receive that implosive compression, and that's what triggers the suction effect, which allows it to attract its first nutrient, defining literally whether the seed is alive or dead, which is why things like Agnihotra, you know, Agnihotra has the same physics, aligned with the plasma right angle, sunrise, sunset, pyramids underneath, dramatic fertility trigger, or things like Therify, anything that spits out this longitudinal compression, because it makes it implosive, and that defines fertility.
Wow, wonderful. Another thing which was really interesting, when we measure the frequency is the same, 28 kilohertz. However, the strength on the ground, 1.9 volts, 3 meters higher, 3.9, another 3 meters higher, even stronger. Now, this was not very logical at the first, because if the source of the energy is somewhere inside the pyramid or below the pyramid, you would expect the opposite, that the strength is getting weaker. But in our case, it was getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
That's because the focal point is above. The focal point maximizes the pressure. I mean, the voltage is literally pressure differential. So you could actually find the focal point, and that's where then the compression is maximum. The voltage is a name for that compression. So you're locating the focal point by looking for max voltage.
Now, interestingly enough, the Tesla's Wardenclyffe tower was the operating frequency that he was using was about 28 kilohertz.
Yeah.
And you know, he was writing in his diary. He done several experiments, and he was writing. He had found a way to send unlimited quantities of energies, thousands of horsepowers, between two planets, regardless of their distance. And you know, he used the same frequency that we found on the top of the Bosnian pyramid of the sun.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to call that longitudinal interferometry, the key to all action at a distance, which Einstein called spooky because he didn't understand how when longitudinal waves bounce at the nodes at a distance, the compression is re-exchanged into transverse, and that's what makes the energy, the heat, available at a distance. It's the holy grail of fusion research, is plasma containment.
I see. The Kukulkan pyramid in Mexico, in Yucatan, in Chichen Itza, the tourist from El Salvador, 10 years back, he was filming his family, and he filmed the energy beam going through the top of this pyramid. And interestingly enough, after this photo, the Mexican government forbid tourists to climb this pyramid. The moon pyramid in Teotihuacan, it seems that we have the same phenomenon. It seems that more pyramids in the world are still active.
The plasma beam.
Yes. Okay, we sent the drone with several different instruments above the Bosnian pyramid of the sun. And this is the measurement which we did in the afternoon. And look at the direction of this energy beam. It seems that it is a little bit to the southwest. Afternoon, southwest, that's the exact position of the sun.
Yeah.
When we did it in the morning, and this energy beam was moved a little bit to the east, it seems that energy beam is following the path of our most important cosmic body, the sun.
And the source of the major longitudinal energy in our array. So
Yes.
that's which we call really the gravity wave. So longitudinal, that's why that's the growth wave, because the perfected implosive compression comes from there. And that's what hooks up the DNA radio.
Of course, our people, our engineers, they call it scalar waves or scalar fields.
Yeah. And scalar is not a bad word, but actually, since it has another meaning in physics, which is almost unrelated, it's more accurate to call it longitudinal interferometry. The Russians sometimes called it torsional because rotation, but it's actually more than rotation, it's rotational implosion. So that's why I suggest a more precise term is longitudinal interferometry. We're going to show some animations how that works.
All right. So
I love that.
It's very possible that we are the first one in the world proving that the pyramids with this energy beam was probably used as the communication device.
Exactly.
Because through the energy, you can send the information, you can communicate. But the real long distances, not the AT&T long distance from Dallas to Houston, but from our planet to other planets, and most probably to other star systems. So our thinking, the first or the major purpose of the pyramids to be a communication device.
And in fact, it's in the literature that the what they call the sacred sites, the Earth magnetic grid cross lines from Kozyrev, that's the only place where military quality telepathy was possible. And it's literally DNA radio. So that's exactly the point. This longitudinal interferometry sets up the condition, and it is actually a helical array. The picture is good.
Great. Now, the part that you like, the tunnels, this is how they look like today. Of course, we put those wooden support because of safety of our visitors and volunteers and researchers. Inside, we can see traces of at least two civilizations. The first one who built this huge network, it's a labyrinth of passageways, intersections, chambers, more than 100 kilometers, more than 60 miles of those underground tunnels. But then the second civilization, who came, of course, much later, they have closed all the tunnels. They filled them with the filler material. They built hundreds of dry walls. Obviously, they didn't want anyone in the future to enter the pyramid. So what we do now, we've been clearing those tunnels, placing the wooden support, and move slowly toward the pyramid. We've been discovering these huge blocks, like this one is sitting on the support below. We took samples, we did a very sophisticated analysis, Röntgen diffraction analysis and phased analysis at the Institute for Atomic Physics in Zagreb. They told us that this sample is an artificial ceramic material. If it is ceramic, it is made by intelligent hands, and it's been there for a very, very long time, telling us that we did have advanced civilization capable of making 8-ton ceramic blocks. And majority, when it comes to the content, we can see quartz, we can see calcite, we can see muscovite. Muscovite also a very interesting mineral. Some people are saying that the time is slowing down in the presence of muscovite. Yes.
I suspect there's probably a super dielectric. I would suggest measuring the dielectric constant that lends like the lodestone or the what's the famous Russian? They use super dielectrics. The Kaba stone was a super dielectric. Straits of Prague. So the dielectric would trigger implosive capacitance there again.
Okay. Georadar, we wanted to see if something was inside. This is what they told us on 3 major places. There are, quartz crystals inside these ceramic blocks.
Like a capacitive lens. I was trying to think of moldavite. The moldavite in Prague would probably be an analog. Super dielectric. Also key to alchemy, by the way.
Good. When we scan this block, a lot of dark blue areas, high frequencies, ideal to affect our spiritual abilities, those spiritual states. You go there, you meditate, very easy to achieve the astral projections. So this was a very important place, I would say, for shamans, for people who are able to control their not physical, but in this case, soul body. People go there, we ask them, okay, open your hands. Can you feel the energy? Of course, we have 5 physical senses, but feeling the energy is something else. It's let's call it a spiritual sense, and people can feel it.
The more you have bliss, the more you get sensitive, because your blood and your aura gets tuned to that charge.
Yes.
That's why you can douse better after you have some bliss experiences too.
Exactly right. Another block, this one is 4 tons in mass. A lot of red, it shows low frequency radiation, and low frequency can penetrate our body quicker, and of course it has beneficial effect to the blood circulation. The blood circulates to all your parts of the body. We are simply put healthier. Now, when it comes to this healing aspect, every year we literally have hundreds of testimonials of our visitors. Today I had one, I filmed the guy, and we place those stuff on our YouTube channel. Now, it's a little bit delicate when it comes to the human health. We always say, okay, we are not in a healing business. We have a non-profit, non-government foundation that's registered for the archaeological and the scientific research, not the healing, not the medicine. We don't give medical guarantees, but since there are so many healing experiences, we simply document them, put them on a YouTube, and if people think that it can help them, let them come. This girl from Slovakia, her name is Veronica. On the picture to the right, we can see that her lung capacity was very low. At one point, only 47%. She could not breathe normally. She could not climb the stairs. For 3 years, she was trying different therapies. Nothing was helping her. She came to Visoko. She was visiting tunnels 2 times a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. After 10 days, she went back. They measured her. Now she was using 84% of her lungs. She came back that September, and she was volunteering with us, pushing the, wheelbarrow. Before that, it was almost impossible to imagine that. We had 6 people from Prague, Czech Republic. This is the medical nurse. She was measuring several parameters. The blood pressure, the sugar in the blood, the glucose in the blood, and so on. For example, glucose, the photo above to the left, the guy was at 7.8. When it comes to the glucose, 3.2, 6.2 normal, 6.2 to 10 risky group, above 10 diabetes. 7.8 risky group. He went to the tunnels, came back, 5.1. In the description, we can see Carol before the tunnels, 10.5. After 1 hour, 5.7. It drops for 5 points. In some cases, we could see people who would be measuring themselves before and after, it would drop even 10 points. There is no medicine that can reduce your sugar in the blood for 10 points after 45 minutes. It does happen in our tunnels. This woman to the left, she's from Turkey. She would have blood pressure going all the way up to 220 over 135, 140. She would have terrible migraines. Since 2015, she's been coming to Bosnian pyramids twice a year. She said that her blood pressure never goes higher than 140/90. And as a matter of fact, a couple of years back, I did measure her blood pressure myself. It was 120/80, like the astronaut. The auric field, now this is a technology developed by Russian brilliant professor, Professor Konstantin Korotkov. To the left is this bioenergy field or auric field before entering the tunnel. And on the top, you can even see when it was 2017, August 17 to 28 p.m. Look at her auric field. It's been damaged because of the stress. It's discontinued and so on. After 1 hour, look at to the right. It is 4 p.m. It's such a huge difference. And then on the bottom, we can see the energy level was 23 joules. After the tunnels, energy level 58 joules. The balance 89%. After the tunnels, 100%. In the last 5 years, since we've had these instruments, we have measured 4,550 people before and after. It's a lot. In medicine, the significant sample is 100 subjects. We had 4,500, and more than 90% have had this effect.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Chakras, 7 chakras, the Eastern tradition, China, Tibet, India, before and after. This is the case of Professor Korotkov. To the left, before entering the tunnels, we can see that they've been balanced perfectly. I've seen people with the chakras all the way to the left, to the right. The only problem Korotkov had was that the chakras were rather small, they were closed. He went to the tunnels and looked at to the right. 3-4 times more open. When they are more open, the energy flows better through your body, affecting all other bodies, emotional, intellectual, physical, energy, and so on. Or in another case, the solid balls before and the circles after. 3, 4, 5 times more open, bigger after entering the tunnels, after being exposed to the pyramid energy. This is an excellent Serbian engineer, Goran Samukovic. He developed his own equipment to measure extremely low frequencies. And here he is on the moon pyramid, here on the sun pyramid, tunnels, and so on. So he was measuring those very low frequencies, 7.83 hertz. The original Schumann resonance, 7.83. Tesla, of course, 125 years ago, thought our planet resonates at 8 hertz. Austrian von Schumann, 50 years back, 7.83, exact measurements. Now, Goran, the engineer, noticed that when he's on the pyramid, when he's in the tunnels, when he's not obstructed by the, electrical wires or anything else, that we have clear 7.83. But once he gets closer to the electrical fields that we made, our frequencies, then it does affect the Schumann resonance. In the tunnels, we have perfect 7.83. When we think, our brain waves, 7.83 hertz. As long as we are in the balance with our planetary frequencies, we are fine. If it grows, it means that we have disbalance, which creates the stress.
And that's where our talk, the next talk will begin about the difference between 7.83, which is a natural, versus 7.29, which is the theoretical. And that difference then is going to explain the other measurements, the 53 and the 28 kilohertz.
Now, one of the major elements that affects our body in a beneficial way are negative ions. Negative ions are extra electrons in atoms or molecules. Once in the air, the negative ions, they connect with the dust. They become heavy, they go on the floor, so they clear the atmosphere from the dust, from the many other stuff, including microbes. The concentrations in our homes are about 20, 30, or 50 negative ions per cubic centimeter. We go to the cities, a little bit fresher when we are outside, 100 and 150. We go to the mountains in the pine tree forests, 750, 1000. We have a couple of instruments to measure them, air ion counters, they are US made. But when you go to the tunnels, the concentrations are between 20 and 60,000 negative ions per cubic centimeter. It is 50 times higher than on the top of the mountains in the pine tree forest, which was considered the healthiest place, 50 times higher. So really, when you come to the tunnels, we notice that there is an absence of all harmful radiations, no cosmic radiations, no natural radioactivity, these are Geiger-Miller counters, no signal for the cell phones, and we can see effect of the cell phones, top left, before you talk on the cell phone, and then to the right, the red color, once you spend 10 or 15 minutes on the phone, what's happened? This bad electromagnetism is burning our brain cells. In the tunnels, no signal for the Wi-Fi. And now when we live on the surface of the planet, we are exposed to all these bad radiations. You know, the cosmic radiations, natural radioactivity, all these signals. In the tunnels, no harmful radiation. Without those enemies, our body cells can start doing their job. What is their job? To fix the problems in our body. And when you add energy phenomena that are also measurable, the best electromagnetic field, the best frequency of the ultrasound of 28 kilohertz, some people call it the levitation frequency because people feel light. The original Schumann resonance, 7.83, and the high concentration negative ions, we are getting the healthiest place on the planet. It is the best protected place. This is the place where the regeneration process starts, and as you like to say, maybe even rejuvenation.
Yes. And the negative ion is implosion. That's what the plasma wind of Therapy is basically concentrated negative ion. And so we know why that implosion then concentrates the ability to have negentropy, self-organization.
If we have a couple of more minutes, we can mention the water also. This is one of the tunnels that where we discovered the water. We can see the water is crystal clear and clean, and it's been there for thousands of years. This is not the surface water, because what we have outside, let's say summer, dry, no rain, the water level remains the same. Or the winter or spring and the rains, the water level it remains the same, it does not rise. So we've done a lot of analysis, conventional analysis, no viruses, no bacteria, no fungi. You can see all the zeros in the middle of this table. No viruses, no Escherichia coli, nothing. Even the values are better than what they allow in our treated water, our, city water. Our city water is treated by the chlorine. So of course, we don't have viruses and bacteria, but we have chlorine, which is the poison. In some countries, there is a fluorides. UK, Ireland, US, Australia, New Zealand, and so on and so forth. In our case, no harmful substances. pH is excellent. And of course, our late friend, Dr. Masaru Emoto, he became famous, freezing the different samples of the water, taking photos through the electronic microscope, and look at the tap water. No structure. Look at the water from the Fujiwara Dam in Japan, bottom right. Water that goes through those, generators. The big picture shows the molecular structure. It's ugly. Of course it's ugly. If we go through this turbine and the generators, we would look exactly like this water here. And bottom left, this is satellite photo of the lake Biwa. This is the largest lake in freshwater lake in Japan. looks beautiful, blue from above, but it is contaminated. Molecular structure, again, ugly. This is the city water, this time from Visoko, but city water, which is, treated. And this is another example of a bad structure. And this is the pyramid water from the underground tunnels.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Even though we sent it through the mail, it went to the airport, at least 3 airports, and the X-rays and whatever. It came to Japan. They got it frozen at minus 21 degrees Celsius. And we can still see hexagonal structure.
They look like pyramids.
Exactly. Hexagon is actually 6 pyramids, 6 equilateral triangles.
The charge is retained.
Yeah, they look at these beautiful crystal-like structures, like Christmas trees around it.
Yeah.
Just comparing the city water and this picture, the first one energetically dead, this one energetically alive. This is a happy water. This one vibrates high. So obviously the pyramid energy affects the molecular structure of our most important liquid, the water. It affects our food. It affects our spiritual abilities. It affects the key word today, which is not a vaccine, but immunity. It affects in always beneficial way. It affects our blood. It clears the atmosphere. When it comes to the purpose of pyramids, we need to change our narrative. Pyramids were not built for one dead body, they were built for the living communities with the idea to last forever, for thousands of years. This is what we need to bring to the science, and I'm glad that I have someone like you who can go much deeper and explain how it works. What I can see is what they are giving us are bedtime stories. What they are giving us through cultural establishment and educational system and media is something that we need to change. And now, when we combine the knowledge, when we combine the sciences, then we can give the full explanation of what's happening in the world of the pyramids.
Thank you, Sam. That was fabulous. We create implosion, we create life force. Exactly. In fact, the very word pyramid, fire in the middle, the nature of that fire is actually the plasma imploding. And that implosion is the nature of life force. Yes. So now we're going to change slideshows here, and we want to put this together with some of the core science. And the most important part of that is what we're going to start with when Patrick, in fact, Patrick, you want to just say briefly, so you went to Bosnia and you made a measurement. I'm going to show that measurement in a minute. And the dominant harmonic was 53 hertz. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And also Sam talked about the K2 room. And in this special room with the big stone, in fact, there was a special measurement also with a standing wave which was moving. And I remember Valerie was standing close to me, and she watched it and she said, "Oh, what is it?" And it was really a special wave which was appearing in this room close to this big structure.
Probably was like an infrasound moving like a serpent. And if we find the ratio between these harmonics, then we find the embedding, and more particularly, we find this implosive caduceus cascade. And that's where we're going with this. So I had known about Patrick's measurement of this 53 hertz. And when he came back, we agonized over it. Now I'm going to share this actual screen right here, life force measure. So what we're featuring here is partially Patrick's work. Let me see if this comes up here. Now I have the slideshows here.
Well, in fact, we have made a lot of measure around the pyramid, in the city, on the top of the pyramid, in the tunnels, and this 53 hertz peak was almost present everywhere around the pyramid, yeah, and also inside the tunnel and above, yeah.
So what we want to look at is see what we're featuring here is the life force measuring technology, which we feature with flameinmind.com. So at flameinmind.com/life force. Now let me see. Are you seeing my slideshow here?
No, not for the moment.
Okay, one moment. So Safari life force. Okay, do you see the life force page now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So at flameinmind.com, we've taken the brainwave measure and modified it with Patrick's help and genius. And we actually use the same brainwave headset to spectrum analyze something on the order of 1 microvolt. And we get these life force measurements, for example, measuring life force in trees here. And we display the harmonics, the low frequency harmonics measured, which relates to the infrasound piezoelectric. So the low frequency phonon, as Sam pointed out, phase locks to the electric field, which is the low frequency electric field. For example, here, we're measuring the life force in a tree on the left. This is a very happy tree. And if you see on the bottom left, right around just below 8 hertz, 7.8 hertz. So if you draw the lines from the frequency we measured in this tree to the known Schumann harmonics, 7.8, 14, 20, and 33 hertz, see those harmonics present in this tree. So this is actually a Schumann harmonic cascade alive in a very happy tree. And you can measure that by using flameinmind.com, because the carbon fiber earphone pickups, which pick up 1 microvolt of your brainwave, will also pick up whether the tree or the pyramid is alive or dead and has that frequency cascade. And you'll see at our bioarchitects.net website, we can also predict what building will cause a seed to grow. Bamboo structure here has a harmonic series that's actually implosive and phase locked to the Schumann cascade. And so that building is going to actually make a seed grow. So that's part of our biologic architecture curriculum. And obviously a pyramid is the ultimate form of biologic architecture. We're saying, you know, give the architect a paycheck if his building will cause a seed to grow. Measure that, and that decides on the paycheck. And in fact, if the building is imploding, so if the building is full of steel, it's not going to work on electrosmog, as Sam is saying. Whereas if the building is made of natural biologic high dielectric material, then it's capacity implosive, and that centripetal force creates life force. So this is kind of the key slide here. You see, let's see if we can understand this in core, because this is our central thesis here now. You can almost see this, but if you take the equation for the origin of negentropy, Planck length and time, the musical key signature of every wave physics has ever measured, the musical key signature of the universe, Planck, 1.61 times 10 minus 33 centimeters, and you multiply by simply powers of golden ratio called fractal phase conjugation, you get this harmonic series, 2.78, 4.5, 7.29, 11.8. In blue here, which you can barely see. I'm sorry about that. But below, you see the actual known Schumann harmonics, 3 hertz, 7.83, 14.3, 20.8. And by the way, there's one at about, 53. So the difference between the theoretical perfect caduceus from Hermes cascade of perfect phase conjugation in blue versus the actual Schumann harmonics, 7.29 and 7.83, predicts a ratio. So if you take that ratio, for example, if you take the perfect cascade, you're going to land actually on 50 hertz, which is the most common frequency mentioned in all cancer healing and key frequency, for example, for how to grow carbon nano and how to heal cancer and key and therapy, 50 and 80 hertz. They're perfect bang on bingo to phase conjugate. However, the Earth's Schumann, although it's close to pure implosion, it's not quite. It should be 7.29, but in fact 7.83. And if you carry that cascade upward, you're going to understand why we measured 53 and Sam measured 28 kilohertz. That's where we're going with this. The other thing we point out, it's well known the Earth is pulsating at 26 seconds. It's widely known, which happens to be exactly 0.1 hertz. 0.1 hertz is called the Mayer wave, and Patrick has dedicated most of his life to it. It's basically one wave every 10 seconds, 0.1 hertz. It's the most important frequency of the blood and the breath and the HRV and the sacrocranial and kundalini. And so here's the Earth resonating in this harmonic series based on Schumann. So anyway, here's the measurement. So on the right is the measurement Patrick made with Sam in Bosnia, right on the right, this yellow line here. So these are the harmonics that Patrick measured, notice around the 32 hertz, which are known in that Schumann cascade. In fact, right down here, see this This is the documented Schumann harmonics. I don't know if you can see this here. This cascade, you see my cursor, 7.83, 14, 21, 26, 33, and 39. And right over here, 53. So this is the known Schumann harmonic cascade, which is right here in green, very close to, but not accurate to phase conjugate charge implosion. And here is accurate phase conjugate charge implosion, 7.29 versus 7.83 hertz. So if you take the ratio between 7.29 and 7.83 right here, yes, that ratio is 1.074. So now we take this cascade, which says our perfect Schumann cascade, 7.83, should produce a harmonic at 50 hertz. But no, we measure 53 hertz in almost every sacred building, especially the Bosnian pyramid. And look, 1.074 times 7.29 hertz equals 53 hertz, actually 53.7 hertz. Explaining why Patrick and I have been walking around the sacred buildings over, measuring 53 hertz, especially in Sam's Bosnian pyramid. So we knew this. Actually, Patrick measured this, and I kind of figured this out some years ago, right, Patrick?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, yes.
A couple of years ago. So we felt very confident everywhere we measure 53 hertz, because the Earth is trying to implode, and it's got implode tuned to Schumann 7.83 instead of pure implosion be 7.29. It's perfect. It all fits together. And then I saw Sam make the presentation you just saw the other day for crystalline physics, and he kept talking about 28 kilohertz. And he mentioned even Tesla was using 28 kilohertz. And I was scratching my head. I went back to my equation and my spreadsheet table and my calculator. And so this same cascade here, if you multiply golden ratio times Planck, you get 26,033 hertz. So perfect implosion would be just over 26,000 hertz. But if you multiply that times 1.074, the same ratio, the cascade that the Earth is actually using to conjugate, which is slightly above perfect because the Schumann is almost perfect, but not quite, you get to 27,961 hertz, just under 28 kilohertz. It's perfect. So your 28 kilohertz is perfect golden ratio cascade to your 53 hertz. And that's a perfect cascade to 7.83 hertz. And that's a perfect cascade to phase conjugate implosion, which is the only way you can pump out a longitudinal wave. That is the point. That if you want to implode that cascade, it's called a caduceus. In physics, it's called phase conjugation. It's Hermes, the same guy who was the seeder in the Cedar races, who designed Hermes caduceus is phase conjugation. He designed these things to implode because if you're not spitting out a longitudinal wave at the center, you can't pump wave the global power grid. You can't pump wave a gravity wave, and you can't pump negentropy and rejuvenation. You've got to be spitting out a longitudinal wave at the core. So that's where we want to go with this. I want to show you actually how that works. So finally, this is all the article, flameandmind.com/lifeforce. Finally, the actual detailed electrical function of the pyramids. Pyramids make longitudinal EMF as global wireless power. So Tesla was close. You see, actually, Sam was right to say Tesla was using 28 kilohertz, but he screwed up when he picked 60 instead of 50. That was a horrible mistake. If he'd have used 50 instead of 60, then we could grow carbon nano, then we could heal cancer. But, so Europe has a prayer at growing carbon nano. In the US with 60, no, it ain't going to happen. Your fullerenes are never going to grow. Sorry. Sorry, America. Tesla screwed that one up. And unfortunately, Tesla didn't know that you had to place the pickup and receive points at the longitudinal wave nodes. Every single major pyramid, almost all of them, are at the Earth grid, dodecaecosa, or related points, which relates to Sam's volcanic lines, actually. So the reason the volcanic lines matter, and the reason the Earth grid magnetic lines, which are dodecaecosa, matter is because that's where the longitudinal waves convert back and forth to transverse. The only place you can get telepathy, and Bruce Cathy measured reduced nuclear critical mass. So this is longitudinal radio. It's only at the nodes. And Tesla didn't put his pickup receive points at the nodes right, and he didn't get the frequencies right. He got the 28 kilohertz, 60. It goes on and on. We've got a slide on how Tesla was close, but. So we want to go back to the other slideshow now. Stop share. I want to tell you a story about a famous book. It's called Two-Thirds by David Myers and David Percy. And it's a book in which the pyramids were called the Hummer, which is where we learned the concept of a gravity diode. Now we know why the pyramids by the ancients were called a hum. You know, Sam is talking about this infrasound underneath that Sam scientists already know is related to the rejuvenation effect. But now we know what the infrasound is perfected. The same golden ratio low frequency cascade in brainwaves that makes bliss, the same low frequency cascade flame and sound, which is the world's most powerful bliss binaural beat, which is the same infrasound that drives Sam Pyramid, and it's the same infrasound that drives flame and sound software, which drives Therify, Quantify, Plasma Fire, and 5-Vibes are 4 different longitudinal coherence producing technologies. Is all driven by that same infrasound. So we're back to the keynote, longitudinal share. Here we are. So this is our title slide, remember, the electrical function of pyramid. It was called the Hummer because a phase conjugate pump wave of the Earth harmonic pumps out a longitudinal wave coherence, which is called a gravity diode. And when you circulate that longitudinal coherence into that array, that is not just gravity stabilizing, but atmosphere stabilizing. And we were taught in depth from like 4 different sources that the pyramids were placed on those nodes specifically to stabilize the Earth on its new axis of tilt after the last major Earth tilt. Actually, it's gravity stabilizing and therefore atmosphere stabilizing. This is explained. I'm going to show you some slides on this. And that implosion then makes it negentropic, and this is my life's work, origin of negentropy. For example, people are now buying Therify.net just to trigger seed growth. It triggers a dramatic effect in seed germination. And that's one of the reasons the pyramids were built, to implode and trigger seed germination. And that is the Schumann Harmonics. That's the rejuvenation effect, the age reversal effect. You know, when physics says, when you phase conjugate lasers and it made time reversal, what classical physics means by that time reversal is only negentropy. So when they said it was time reversed, they actually mean it simply went back to a previous state of increased order, negentropy, because you cannot time reverse something toward disorder, only toward order. It's very important. So negentropy is the essence of time reversal, actually. And so the global wireless power is the longitudinal array. And that global wireless power was working. You could pick up that longitudinal wave at a distance and light bulbs. Absolutely. This was a functional global wireless. And the Andromedas have taught us that. The Pleiadians, they all have their separate history story of how the pyramids were built. And by the way, it was the ancient cedar races, which also is Thoth Hermes, literally, if you believe, only planet of choice, naming the 9 who have now returned around Ganymede. See our slides on this. The cedar races, Thoth Hermes is back, and they're around Ganymede. This is no joke. And the cedar races are here specifically for one specific reason, to see if their seeds are growing. Us. Anyway, and so the pyramids function for plasma projection, literally to squirt your aura like a squirt gun, for example, a tube pointing to Orion and Sirius. And they can also use a plug axis for longitudinal charge propulsion devices. So basically, the image that we want to show here of why the pyramids were at the tetrahedral latitudes, to grab the grid by the nodal array so you could embed the short wave in the long wave. And I have to do my little demo here. This is my, okay, now we have the little demo. Okay, so this is a gyroscope, which is what everything in physics is made of gyroscope. In fact, physics has nothing but gyroscopes to talk about. Actually, it's all about spin. So, but if I spin this little gyroscope here, and I get the phase angle of the short wave embedded correctly in the long wave, then the long wave can pump the short wave. Ooh. Now, the long wave is the phase lock of the Earth's spin with zodiacal spin. And that cascade of the long wave to the short wave, when that translation of vorticity takes the inertia of this long wave precession, it is in phase with the short wave, which is the Earth's spin. That phase relationship of that cascade is called the gravity. I mean, it's called origin of centripetal forces. That phase lock, by stabilizing the Earth spin relationship to zodiacal spin, actually stabilizes gravity. And what that feels like is the point of this little demo. Now, let's see if I can make this work. Hold it through, move this, spin this. You see it's lighting up. So, and I can feel this. It takes all the strength in my hand just to pump that wave. And as I feel that relationship of the short wave spin to the long wave spin, that's called the quality of grace. It's actually how you increase the spin in your aura when you're doing yoga, if you can feel it. But this is what's meant in this slideshow here. So again, this longitudinal wave. So you see this. So the phase relationship of the Earth spin to zodiacal spin, that embed ability of the short wave in the long wave, you take that cascade in principle to its completion, you arrive at the physics of stabilizing local gravity with precession nutation of the zodiacal spin. And this is part of the gravity diode effect. But this is introduction to why the pyramids had to be at the tetrahedral latitude, because you had to grab a hold of the Earth's spin and spin it in phase with zodiacal spin, and stabilizing that cascade stabilized gravity and atmosphere. And as a clue to the concept of gravity diode, because out the center is coming a longitudinal wave from a transverse, because the squirt gun is working. So this is an example of a phase conjugate pump wave in the Koski-Frost crystal, which made 800 times its weight in gravity from a phase conjugate pump wave. And this is actually called warp propulsion in Star Trek, actually. And this is Bill's, Elizabeth Donovan's book on that at fractalfield.com/propulsion. This is just an example of making gravity from a phase conjugate pump wave, literally, and this is well documented. This is a crystal that made 800 times. It was making gravity, and we have vortex experiments teaching how this is working. And let me just show you some examples. So this is I guess that's the spin. And so this is the phase relationship of local spin with zodiacal spin, where the Earth's spin geometry has to embed in a longer and longer wave. Earth spin, solar system spin, and zodiacal spin, and there's 3 planes of perpendicular spin. And when those planes line up perpendicularly, for example, Sam, your pyramid is going to do more of all of this better at the moment of sunrise and sunset, at the time of equinox and solstice, because that creates that phase conjugate embedding the right. That's why Agnihotra creates fertility. And that's why the golden ratio is the central geometry of gravity stability, because that's how you make stable gravity. So we know for sure that the golden ratio is the centerpiece of gravity dynamics. Orbital dynamics are built around golden ratio everywhere you work. But nobody's ever told you why golden ratio is the centerpiece of almost all stable orbital dynamics, because they don't know why an object falls to the ground. That's a detail. And the fact, if you can't teach your kids why an object falls to the ground, you can't teach any centripetal forces. That's the tragedy here. So just backing up a little bit, then we're getting to this background of fractal physics of charge distribution in the vacuum. Essentially, what we're enabling with pyramids is charge distribution perfected. Charge distribution perfected is what restores circulation, restores breathing, restores rejuvenation. And obviously, implosion is charge distribution perfected, sometimes called heaven, plains of Charon, Champs-Élysées. So the universe of charge distributes as a superfluid. That's what's called the ether. And that charge distribution efficiency requires a fractal longitudinal array. And that fractal array is what enables stable gravity in atmosphere. So that this is just thinking in terms of pure principle to start to think about yourself as part of that array. That's what this is about. This is all the presentation from fractalfield.com/vacuum energy and the original 0-point energy presentations we made in Amsterdam. So the charge is simply that superfluid. And when that charge implodes and compresses, you get that array, you get that impulse through the speed of light at the Planck threshold into the longitudinal. And instantly, when Professor Raymond Chow measured faster than light velocities, all the measurements were between 1.5 and 1.7 times c light speed, very close to golden ratio, which would be the smoking gun proof. If golden ratio times the speed of light is the most common measured velocity faster than light, then that's proof I'm correct about about everything here, because you go through the speed of light at Planck threshold by golden ratio, and that's how you make a longitudinal array. So fractality perfected, recursion perfected. You've heard this story before. So, and if you rotate these conjugators, you actually make propulsion. And so here, these are low purity nanostructures. If you use high purity, we're going to make propulsion on a global scale. Now, I'm not going to do all of these slides, but I just wanted to show you the one slide about, because your physics teacher could not teach your child why an object falls to the ground. Therefore, your physics teacher could not teach your child why anything is centripetal like a pyramid. Therefore, your physics teacher believes the universe is condemned to entropy, which is very pessimistic, actually, when in fact there is a path called the caduceus to negentropy, which is the only way out of chaos. Hello. So not only is your physics teacher not inform your child the cause of gravity or light force or consciousness, all implosion, but your physics teacher incorrectly tells your child the universe is condemned to disorder, and it ain't. A bit sad, actually. So this is a path to perfect distribution and the perfect flame. The fire does not consume flame in mind. So here is the animation. This is what a transverse wave looks like. It looks a little nervous to me. Whereas this is what a longitudinal wave looks like, or sometimes called a scalar. It's a compressional wave. Sound waves travel like this. But in electromagnetics, we very rarely, most physicists do not know how to even pick up a longitudinal electromagnetic, unfortunately. And yet it's that compressional component that travels efficiently for action at a distance. And when you cause longitudinal waves to converge from 4 directions, sometimes called phase conjugation, you actually get, we knew how to do this with lasers, but doing this magnetically and capacitively, phase conjugation in broad spectra, was not known until my work. Elizabeth Rauscher confirmed that I had invented phase conjugate magnetics. Anyway, so just here is this visualized in center here. This is Sam's pyramid. Okay, this is a side view of charge going down Sam's pyramid. And so in the big end of the pyramid, you have a transverse wave. And because it goes down that cone efficiently, and that cone is the 53 and 28 kilohertz harmonic, that's the cone of power, and that's called optimized translation of vorticity in physics. In myth, it's called a caduceus. In physics, it's called phase conjugation. So in only that path down, only that cone, precisely at the Planck threshold where the toothpaste tube is squeezed, out comes the coherent longitudinal wave on the right from the transverse wave on the left. That's called a gravity diode. Remember, Tom Bearden's equations proved that that longitudinal wave is the stuff of gravity waves. Hello. And the stuff of how you make seeds grow. Gravitobiology. We'll show the cover slide. So that's the point. That's the reason gravity exists. And that's why it's called an L, a translation of vorticity as a phase shift. And that's why it's a right angle. Literally, you're instead of the horizontal lines you saw, Sam, that's the vertical component. The longitudinal wave is spit out the top of the cone. So this is how you phase conjugate lasers. That's well known. It's based on golden ratio, pine cones, kissing noses, but it's also how you phase conjugate pyramids. So, and this is, most of you know my equation, golden ratio times Planck, and you get all these beautiful hydrogen radii, ATP, the Mayer wave. You get the Schumann harmonics. You get the Venus year, Earth year, precessional year, galactic year. These are wavelengths that create phase conjugation to Planck, longitudinal coherence, and therefore negentropy. And right on this line, very close, would be the 28 kilohertz and the 53 hertz that we measure in Sam's pyramid. So that's the point. This is our physics paper on the cause of gravity based on these radii and hydrogen. This is the book I'm referring to from Tom Bearden, Gravitobiology, which is basically the equations proving how longitudinal EMF creates gravity and actually creates fertility. Remember Agnihotra, that using the same principle creates dramatic fertility. We talk about Einstein's issues and Tesla having chosen the wrong frequency, 60 instead of 50, although apparently he got the 28 kilohertz right, but he also didn't get the nodal array right to make global wireless power work. So that's the end of this segment of the slides. Now, the last piece here, let's see, 87 to 46 to 50. 1 second here. This slideshow, yeah. So this is, you're visualizing how gravity is stabilized. The pine cone, like the pyramid, is allowing the adding and multiplying of wave phase velocities to be recursive constructive. And that adding and multiplying the phase velocity to 53 and 28 kilohertz in Sam's pyramid turns that compression into acceleration towards center, named gravity, and named phase conjugate, and named negentropy, because that's becomes centripetal, and that then sorts only waves that can pass through that center become locked into phase, and that locking into phase at the center of that implosion sorts out any wave that's disordered, and only order survives that implosion. That's the point. That's what Schauberger discovered. That's why the pyramid is creating rejuvenation. That's why it's a Shem unto the Lord. So that causes and stabilizes gravity. And notice that Kepler was right. The Platonic nest, which now we know is a golden ratio nest, actually is planetary orbitals. Kepler was right. And that's how gravity is stabilized. And you take that plan of Platonic nesting and apply it to how pyramids were used on planets, and you understand the gravity diode idea. So let's stop the screen share here. So just to summarize here, that the pyramid is basically an imploder. That's what it is. And by creating implosive compression, it allows the charge to have the only possible way out through center, which is Planck. Remember when Einstein correctly said, gravity is infinite non-destructive compression. And if you knew where the charge went out the center without getting lost, then you'd know the cause of gravity. Well, now we happen to know. Where charge goes out through center, that makes gravity non-destructive compression, Einstein's correct name for gravity, was the fact that the only way out is when that charge reaches the Planck threshold and the squeeze in the toothpaste tube is sufficient, and the charge goes out through the speed of light by golden ratio times the speed of light into a series of harmonics, distributing that longitudinal wave into the array of the Earth grid dodecaecosa called the gravity array, that sacred space, and stabilizing charge circulation in that larger dodecaecosa, Earth grid gravity wave. Remember, it's all dodecaecosa, start with the kit. And that's the geometry of Earth grid DNA zodiac. Because only that stabilizes golden ratio perfected distribution, and therefore mindfulness itself, DNA radio. So what stabilizes gravity also is what enables the possibility of DNA radio and human bliss, actually, as Kozyrev correctly predicted. You could only get military quality telepathy at the same nodes, which are the ones at which pyramids and labyrinths work. So short summary, implosive compression enabled in the shape of a harmonic series of a perfected caduceus, 28 kilohertz, Schumann Harmonics, 53 hertz. That perfected frequency caduceus allows the implosion that allows at center the propagation of a longitudinal array, which Sam depicted squirting out the top of his pyramid, is what makes the pyramid a gravity stabilizer, an atmosphere stabilizer, a rejuvenation creating device, a global wireless power enabling device. You can pick up that power at every longitudinal node on that array if you know how to impedance match, etc. So all the myths we have about the pyramid, right from the caduceus of Hermes, the builder, actually are physics. Okay, so maybe no questions, comments, dialogue.
This was wonderful. You explained it all. You explained the pyramids. You explained the tumulus phenomenon. You explained the cone. You explained why we've been seeing it on all, ancient sites, from Sumerians, Egyptians, and all others, Mayan, and so on.
So we really should be able to teach at universities and in classical education the electrical physics of why pyramids are powerful. It's true that it's better if we have people who know why an object falls to the ground. We'll leave out there Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and NASA, because they don't. But once you know what creates that acceleration of charge towards center, phase conjugate implosion, all tuned to Planck, which has proven that hydrogen radii are exactly tuned to Planck by golden ratio, which is new information. My new equation proved it. So we now know how hydrogen is making gravity. And by extension, now we know how pyramids are making gravity, called the gravity diode. I mean, it actually fits together. It's beautiful physics. Anyway, I get enthused.
That's wonderful. That was great lecture. Great.
Yeah. And I want to thank Patrick for coming here also. You know, Patrick has such a background in biology and has dedicated his life to programming and enabling we have 6 biofeedback apps, but that Flame in Mind app, which also drives all of our, plasma devices, which the same harmonic series, which is what drives the pyramid, it starts with the brainwave and also is related to the spine liquid pump, the sacrocranial, which Patrick is expert at. And so we can see why people have access to more bliss inside Sam's pyramid, because that infrasound is actually literally the low frequency Schumann cascade, which is driving your spine liquid pump into the physics of Kundalini and bliss. All of these things fit together. The body implodes with bliss, and that's what creates the immune system, actually. And Sam is exactly right. You need to be sheltered from your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth and the electrosmog. And actually, you do not want to be in steel and aluminum structures for too long because they have the wrong dielectric. They prevent that implosion. So the high dielectric natural materials that Sam is talking about, that capacitive layering, all function to serve that implosive lensing of charge implosion, enabling that squirt gun into the longitudinal. So you can see this invents a whole new hygiene, because if you're able to, if you're able to teach your kids how to have a bliss experience, then you have culture. The Aboriginals did, but we don't. Oops. All right. Was that a happily ever after?
Well, it was great, Dan, that you found a way to analyze this 53 hertz, because at the beginning we were really wondering where it was.
We're measuring it everywhere.
But you built the beautiful solution that explains everything.
Yeah.
And also today the relationship with the high frequency of the top of the pyramids is really great.
Yeah, the fact that Sam found the 28 kilohertz on the top of the 3 of them, and that he identified Tesla was using it. And now we know why, because it cascades, implodes. And you're right, Sam, the levitation frequency, because actually, the myth was you pay your debt to gravity. If you get more fractal than the earth underneath you. And by the way, Valerie's teacher, they saw her grandmother floating. It was real.
Good.
All right. Well, I think we did our happily ever after. So our intention is that you share this video, all of you, with your friends and say, we now know the science, and I do mean the serious electrical science of why pyramids work. It's not a mystery, and we can tune them. We can fix them. We can actually make them work better now that we understand the physics. So thank you very much, Sam. We had great fun. We're going to have more fun in the future. Let's make this a shareable wave.
We will. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Stu. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. And Sam, give them your website, just so again.
BosnianPyramid.org. BosnianPyramid.org.
BosnianPyramid.org. And here it's fractalfield.com, and then the flameinmind.com/lifeforce. And Patrick's is craniosacral-app.com, which lists all 5 of our biofeedback apps. And you can use them to measure pyramids. Okay, guys. Thank you a lot.
Okay, thank you. It was nice to see you.
Bye, Sam.
Bye-bye.
It was great, Sam. Thank you so much. Thank you.